traditional, super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. Hope you're doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Today is going to be all about honey. How sweet is that? Honey is a yummy treat that has lots of health benefits, but what is it really? How is it made? What's the best way to store it? And how long will it last? All of these questions and more will be answered in today's podcast. I want to take a minute and say welcome to all the new listeners, and as always, welcome back all of you who are veteran homestead loving regulars stopping by the FarmCast for every single episode. I appreciate you all so much. We have lots to talk about regarding the goings-on around the homestead. So let's start with the cows. I love our cows so much. They are definitely my favorite. Well, I love the lambs too, and the goats, and the quail. What about the donkeys? Okay, I can't decide on a favorite, but I do love the cows. We tried again to put the milking moms in with the rest of the herd and the other three nursing calves. So this would be Butter and Rosie. We were trying to get them in with the rest of the calves. And there's a video up on Facebook, on our Facebook page, of Princess following Rosie around. And as you can imagine, Rosie came up short a couple of gallons of milk this morning. Well, it was worth a try anyway. Princess is a very resourceful young lady and will latch on anywhere that anyone will let her. So they're separated again. Violet is bagging up. And that means she is approaching her delivery. We now have her in with Rosie and Butter, who are, again, separated now from the rest of the herd again. So these three are going to come up every day, twice a day, so we can check on Violet more often and, of course, milk the other two. And the rest of the crowd is going to come up once a day. They're getting retrained for the upcoming artificial insemination procedures. There are three. There's a hormonal implant that's done a week ahead to get them all cycling together, and then there's a hormone shot 3 days ahead to get them to ovulate, and then the AI implantation takes place. And after all of that, we have to wait for another 3 weeks to see if they come into heat again, and if they do, then we try the implant once again, and that circle of life is continued. This will be our second year of using artificial insemination. I hope it goes better this year. I expect it will. Experience always makes things go easier. Violet will be the only one not involved in this first round of AI, as she will either not have delivered yet even, or will have freshened only a day or so ahead of all the prep. And she'll need actually 6 weeks before she's ready to start her next calf. So she'll have to happen much later. But all the rest of them are in the group, and we'll be adding Luna to the rotation this year. Now, as far as the sheep, we lost yet another one. And this time to a rogue dog, or so the tracks would indicate. These tracks were much too large for a coyote. And I say it was a rogue dog because we never saw another indication that it was still in the area. It's like it was just passing through. And there was a very large lost dog that was listed on our county Facebook page the very next day, or a dog that was found. And they were looking for the owners. So are they connected? We'll never know. The losses are devastating, but we keep moving. We continue to search for a livestock guardian dog and pray the right one comes along soon. Scott's out in the garden today putting in a whole lot of plant starts. We've been so busy with other things that the garden tasks have just been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back some more. And he's out there trying to get us caught up. what a wonderful man he is as he picks up the slack that I'm leaving out there. I sprained my hand last week, and it will hurt like crazy if I work it too hard. And Scott's been doing lots of things to help me out. The garden work is only one of them. He would have helped anyway, but he's literally doing it all right now. So I have 2 perennial herbs that are going in between the sections of the strawberry patch. I already have oregano and thyme out there, and today Scott is adding the rosemary and garden sage. And other herb plants that he's hoping to get in the ground are the parsley and basil. I'm raising those as annuals. Perhaps when I have an official herb garden, I'll plant some that will reseed each year. We shall see. On the vegetable front, he has 2 flats of peppers out there that will fill another 2 raised beds. It's a lot to accomplish in one day. Will he reach his goal? We shall see. I think he can do it. But whatever he gets done is so, so appreciated. The peppers are those lovely California Wonder bell peppers, the big bell peppers that you see, like you see in the grocery store, and the pepperoncini. I'm going to pickle some this year and look for those at the farmer's market this fall. So if you like those pepperoncini on your pizza and on your roasts or wherever, we'll be having those ready for you. Now, one other garden topic is the tomatoes. I only have 2 flats of tomato starts left. I'm taking them to the farmer's market this weekend, and whatever's left will be planted just behind the shelling peas that are planted along the orchard wall. Scott put up a fence for a trellis there, and it's working great for the peas right now. And as they come out in the next few weeks, the tomatoes will pick up where they left off. Still to come are the beans and crowder peas. It is so much all at once. And then the maintenance of fertilizer and water is all that is needed. And we already have some compost tea brewing in a couple of 55-gallon barrels. We have plenty of poo that Scott gathered and put in there. And then he filled the barrels with water so that the tea can brew. So we got all different kinds of poo. We got goat, sheep, the cows, of course. And so it makes a great fertilizer. Now, with all the garden stuff going on, what is happening with the creamery? Well, the answer there is nothing. We're still waiting on the guys who will build and install the milking stanchion setup. We've now decided to add the other option that was offered to us a few weeks ago. So let me just recap that a little bit. The quote for the stainless steel overhead complete pipeline system was way outside of our budget, and we nixed that. And so then we just asked them just for the milking stanchion setup. And so they quoted us that, and it was quite reasonable, well within our budget. And then they added on to their quote that another option that they could hook up our vacuum pump. We already have the vacuum pump for the pipeline system. So we could milk into buckets and then pour the buckets into the bulk holding tank. And I kind of balked at this as well. The price quote it was certainly within reason, and we could swing it financially, but I just didn't see the real benefit. And now comes the part about how I injured my hand and how we are likely going to get that vacuum pump working. I didn't see the benefit because we already have the portable milkers that pump the milk into a can. We're already doing that, except it's a little machine on wheels, and it's easy to move from cow to cow. We can do 2 at a time. It really works well for us. So why change? Well, because it can fail quite easily. One evening during cleanup after milking, the cover over the vacuum tank on that little machine suddenly collapsed and was sucked into the vacuum drum. Scott and a family friend worked on getting something patched together for the morning milking so that we would have something to milk the cows in the morning. And they worked well past midnight on that. So in the morning, we tried the newly engineered vacuum tank cover, and it failed within a minute or so. Rosie was maybe halfway milked out. Butter was not even close. And it just collapsed again. And without that vacuum, you are just not going to get that milk out. So I quickly got together what we needed to hand milk the cows. Butter was done in a little over 20 minutes or so with both of us working on her. And then we moved to the really hard one, which was Rosie. And she was already milked out some, but there was probably close to a gallon still to go. But Rosie's teats are about as big as my little finger. Truly, they are tiny. and there was no way to get a good grasp on her teats. And so we were getting about a quarter teaspoon, literally a quarter teaspoon, little squirt, squirt, just, and it was just like, I can't imagine how long it would take to completely milk her out. So we finally decided to just let her go and make sure we had a system in place to milk her out in the evening. You don't want to leave them without being milked out, because then they'll stop producing milk if you don't milk them out. So one other thing that we tried along the way was using the other portable milker that we have as a backup. It has been so long since we had used it, like well over a year, maybe a year and a half, that we didn't even remember how to set it up correctly. There are lots of hoses that have to be hooked up just so, or it simply won't work. And this particular milker needs to be oiled in order to function properly. And here's where I fell. Scott turned it on, and he had put the oil in there, and the oil shot up out of the top like a geyser, splashing on the roof of the shed and splattering everywhere. And so I tried to quickly jump out of the way, and my foot caught on a piece of wood that we had in the ground from a couple of years ago when we had to tie one of Butter's leg back so she wouldn't kick the milking inflations off her teats. And so my foot caught, and down I went. I fell to the side and landed on the outside of my right arm and hand. And within a few minutes, I felt all right. The pain kind of subsided. And so I continued to do everything I had planned for the day. And basically, that was making cheese. And then over the next few hours, the pain escalated to the point that I had to get Scott to finish the cheese while I went to the urgent care clinic. Good news, no broken bones, but a good sprain in that hand. And according to the PA, it was likely my osteoarthritis causing the biggest part of the pain at the moment. And he wrapped it up, and I kept it wrapped up for a couple of days, but it seems like everything I do involves water. And I finally gave up on the wrap and have been using my sense of pain to temper my activity. If it hurts, stop. And it's an imperfect method, which usually by the end of the day my hand is throbbing. But today the swelling is almost gone. It'll still be a few more weeks before it's back to normal. And again, Scott's picking up the slack for me. He's always there for me. The bottom line is I can now see very clearly why we might want that vacuum pump hooked up and working. It's a nice, good, solid vacuum pump. And then keeping the working portable milker as a standby. Experience is a great teacher, and all of that to say that the creamery is currently on pause while Scott does other things and we wait on the milking stanchions and likely the vacuum pump work to be completed. The primer coat of paint is complete, and Scott decided on the wall coloring. It will be a color that is between the color of milk and butter, so nearly white but with some yellow tone. It's going to be glorious. Okay, that went on a little bit longer than I anticipated. Let's get on to the topic of honey. So that's it for the homestead updates. Now, let's talk about honey. We've had one single beehive in the corner of the orchard for several years. And we've never worked this hive. The bees fended for themselves. We never took their honey. They kept it all. This likely would have continued for another few years until maybe we had time to start looking at maybe collecting honey, except that our bees did not survive this past winter. And I asked one of the guys that sell honey at the farmer's market what might have happened, and he said that they also lost more hives than usual. So if the bees unclump because it gets warm and then it gets cold again, they will freeze. They clump together over the winter. They clump together in a tight pack, and they keep the queen bee in the center of the clump so she's warm. And then throughout the winter, more and more bees on the outside kind of die off. You have to have a good strong hive to get through the winter. And the rest are, they keep going and going, keeping that queen safe and warm. And again, if they unclump too early, the cold can kill them. And we did have lots of warm and then freezing weather right behind it. So, yeah, I kind of figured that's really what happened. And then once the weather got warm for a longer period of time, all sorts of bees came around that now unprotected hive to steal the honey. An active hive will have an army of bees that protect the entrance from just this sort of activity, because any bee will steal honey that they find undefended. So it was an angry mob out there, hundreds of bees just flying around, but they weren't organized in the hive. They were just robbing that honey. So Scott waited until it got dark and the bees went home. And then he pulled off the top 3 boxes, or supers, and they were full of honey. And we kept the boxes covered in plastic garbage bag inside and away from those robber bees until we could get to them. So that was another one of those tasks that got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But Scott started working on getting the honey out of the comb just a few days ago. And we have the honey extracted and will begin seeing what we can do about preserving the wax in the next couple of days. So all of these new experiences. So we have lots of honey now, perhaps 5 gallons or so. And what will we do with all of that? Well, let's just talk about honey in general. What is honey? How about a few trivia facts to get us started? The honey itself is produced from flower nectar, you've probably heard that, or from honeydew that is secreted from other insects. The bees eat the nectar or honeydew, and they add some of their stomach enzymes and then regurgitate it, the result. And it goes into the wax structure or honeycomb, where they proceed to fan it with their wings, causing the water to evaporate. More on that later. So what makes it sweet? Whenever you see that O-S-E on the end of a word, ose, it means a type of sugar. Honey gets its sweetness from fructose and glucose. And honey has about the same relative sweetness as sucrose, which is table sugar. So those of you counting calories will want to know that 1 tablespoon of honey is about 46 calories. Honey use and production have a long and varied history, and there are cave paintings, excuse my Spanish here, I'm going to give this a shot, Cuevas de la Araña, I think it is, in Spain. And these paintings depict humans foraging for honey, and they're done at least 8,000 years ago. Large-scale Melaponic culture has been practiced by the Mayans since pre-Columbian days. I'm not sure if I'm saying this word right. Melaponic culture beekeeping of stingless bees. So the stingless bees are melaponines. And they actually have stingers, but they're small and not used for defense. And there are other types of stingless bees, and they can have painful and powerful bites, so they don't need the sting. But global production of honey just, let's see, I think this was in 2019, was 1.9 million tons. 1.9 million tons. Leading producers are China with 20% of the total, and then you have Turkey, Canada, Argentina, and Iran also producing lots of honey. Now, let me expand a little bit on how honey is made. I just kind of briefly went over it. There's more to it than eating pollen, regurgitating, and drying it. It all starts with the queen. Each hive must have a queen. She keeps the hive functioning, and there can only be one. Then when the hive gets too large, the queen will begin laying queen cells. Nurse bees take care of this cell by feeding the queen cells nothing but royal jelly. Other eggs only get royal jelly for the first few days, but the queen cells get only royal jelly. Now, once the new queen hatches, the older queen leaves with a small swarm, so the new, younger, stronger queen does not kill her. And then you have what if multiple queen cells hatch at once? They will fight to the death because there can only be one. All right, now that the new queen is hatched, it's her job to lay eggs and keep the hive thriving. And of course, that means she has to mate before laying eggs, and so she does what's called the mating flight. And this is where the worker bees and drones come in. The worker bees mainly lay drone eggs, and the drones are the male bees. So the virgin queen bee will only mate once in her lifetime, and these drone bees wait their entire life for the chance to mate with a queen. And after that, they're just another mouth to feed. So the queen flies high into the sky, and the drone bees are hanging out, waiting for their opportunity. The strongest and genetically best drones will make their way to the queen, and it's a short life, though. The drone's genitalia will be ripped free after mating, leaving a hole that will ultimately lead to his death. It's a short life filled with purpose. His life mission to continue his DNA is completed, and he dies. And the queen has a storage sac where the sperm is stored and utilized for the rest of her life. Now the queen returns to the hive and begins laying the eggs. She lays in the cells called brood chambers, and based on the needs of the hive, the queen actually determines what type of bee each egg will produce. I mentioned the queen cell earlier. It's peanut shaped, and then the drones are the larger cells, and worker bees are smaller cells. Young worker bees are called nurse bees, and they feed all the cells in which she has laid eggs. Now, the bees start out as larvae, and then they graduate to whatever their job is going to be when they mature. And the drones, as I mentioned above, they hang around and they get fed, leaving the hive during the day to hang out with other drones searching for a virgin queen in flight. So the worker bees are all female. Some, the older ones, gather the pollen, while others stay in the hive receiving the pollen and other things that are brought in to the worker bee. The others will also help with making the honey. There are some worker bees that become only nurse bees, caring for the eggs and larvae, and some that are called attendants care for the queen bee. Now, most bees live for about 2 months or less. So all of this is happening very quickly. So that makes the drone's life and the ending of his life a little less creepy. They only live 2 months anyway. Now, the queen bee's job is to lay eggs, and she will lay around 1,500 eggs per day. That's a full-time job. You got the queen bee, you got the worker bees and nurse bees that are in the hive and gathering the pollen, and you got the drone bees that are looking for that virgin queen. Now, the older scavenger bees, these are the worker bees that are a little bit older. They'll travel within a 5-mile radius of their hive to collect food and pollen using their proboscis like a straw, and what they don't use for their own nourishment in their first stomach goes to their second stomach. And this is like a storage pouch for transferring what they collect. And then they return to the hive. And the worker bee in the hive will use their proboscis to suck the nectar and pollen from the scavenger bee's second stomach. Interesting, huh? So then the worker bees spread what they've collected from the scavenger bees of the pollen, and then they collect that and they spread it over an empty comb that was constructed by other worker bees. So you got a group of worker bees that are making combs now. So once a comb is full, the honey needs to be dehydrated. Pulling the water out of the honey keeps it from spoiling. So they dehydrate it by flapping their wings at just the right speed for just the right amount of time, and their instincts tell them when the honey is ready. Next, the honey is capped. Bees create wax from their abdomen and then lay out sheets of it, capping the newly filled comb. And this keeps the water out, keeps it from getting in more water in there after they've dehydrated to the perfect honey state. And then they eat the honey in the winter. And that's it. The honey's made. This is where the beekeeper will come in and make the harvest. And again, we have never done this in our in real time for ourselves. We only saved what was left after the hive died. So that's yet another learning experience for another day. So now that you've got the honey out, how do you store it? Because honey is a staple in kitchens of many around the globe. It's a very useful sweetener. It never goes bad, and it's very easy to store. Even if it starts to crystallize, it can easily be restored. All you need is to keep it cool and away from direct sunlight. Use a tightly sealed container. Glass or food-safe plastic are the best containers. Honey can oxidize metal. You do not need to refrigerate honey. In fact, it will become really, really thick and harder to use when you need it. So you end up heating it up a little to return it to its liquid form. So refrigeration is not only not necessary, it's not really advised. Honey will keep for a very long time. The high concentration of sugars makes it one of the most stable natural foods available. It can have an almost indefinite shelf life if stored properly. Again, cool, dry, sealed tightly. You may notice that honey producers put a best buy date on their products, and it's usually about 2 years. But according to the National Honey Board, this is done for practical purposes because of the variability of honey. However, they do note that honey can be stable for decades, even centuries. So, do not be alarmed if your honey becomes cloudy during storage. This is simply the honey crystallizing. It is not an indication of deterioration. Raw honey with high pollen content will crystallize faster than commercially produced honey. Specifically commercially produced, they do things to reduce the crystallization. And sometimes crystallization is produced on purpose by the beekeeper. Crystallized honey can easily be reliquefied. You place the jar in a pan of hot water, stir gently while it's heating. Do not overheat it. Excessive heat can alter the flavor if the sugars begin to caramelize. So you don't want it hot. You just want it warm enough to melt those crystals. The microwave will get too hot too quickly, so avoid the microwave. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are the health benefits of honey. There are so many, but I'm only touching on 5 today, and just touching. Raw honey has been used as a folk remedy throughout history. It's even used in some hospitals as a treatment for wounds. And many benefits are specific to raw or unpasteurized honey. Most of the honey you find in your grocery store is pasteurized. The high heat of pasteurization kills unwanted yeast, and it can improve the color and texture. It removes the crystallization, right, and extends the shelf life. So that's how they get a longer shelf life without crystallization, is the pasteurization. Unfortunately, many of the beneficial nutrients are also destroyed in the process. As with pasteurized anything, you're losing some of the beneficial nutrients. All right, so one benefit is a good source of antioxidants. Some types of honey have as many antioxidants as fruits and vegetables, and antioxidants help to protect your body from cell damage due to free radicals that are left behind in your chemical reactions in your body. They occur naturally, but you want to have as few of them as possible and have vegetables, honey, whatever, that can clean up those free radicals. It has antibacterial and antifungal properties. Research has shown that raw honey can kill unwanted bacteria and fungus. It naturally contains hydrogen peroxide. And its effectiveness varies, but it is clearly more than a folk remedy for bacterial and fungal infections. It can heal wounds. Manuka honey, it helps heal wounds. Manuka honey is used in medical settings to treat wounds because it has been found to be an effective germicide. It also aids in the regeneration of tissue. Now, honey used in a medical setting is inspected and sterile. Do not treat your cuts with honey from the grocery store. You don't know where that's been. It's good for digestive issues. Honey is sometimes used to treat diarrhea, though there's not much research confirming it. It is proven effective as a treatment for H. pylori, which is a common cause of stomach ulcers. Honey is also a prebiotic, meaning it nourishes the good bacteria that's living in your intestine, so that also helps with your digestion. All right, and the last one, it's soothing a sore throat. Hot tea with honey and lemon is a very common sore throat remedy. It's easy to make and tastes good too. It also works as a cough suppressant. 1 or 2 teaspoonfuls straight should do the trick. Now, one other note here. Are there any risks? There is only one risk regarding honey of which I am aware. Honey should never be given to an infant under 1 year. And I believe it is the danger of Clostridium that is the problem there. So you have beneficial bacteria, but you can also have some that are not so beneficial. There's so much more I could share about honey, but this podcast has already gone on a bit longer than usual. And so that's it for this edition of the Peaceful Heart FarmCast. I hope you enjoyed the homestead updates. Let me know if there's anything else in particular you'd like to know about what we do here. Drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you. The animals are all doing well. I didn't get to the quail, so more on that in the next one. As I said, there is much more I could share about honey. Let me know if you have questions. I'll do my best to answer them. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcast or whatever podcasting service you use and subscribe. And give me a 5-star rating and a review. And if you like this content and want to help out our show here, the absolute best way you can do that is to share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. Share it on all your social media. Let your friends know about the Peaceful Heart FarmCast. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.